Uh, what's up? Wow, here we are. Yet another day. Very, very good. Well, I don't know. I think after such a long while, certainly something interesting might, must have been prepared. Probably, no. Taking into consideration that um, one of the main promises is to try and bring anything of value, then certainly something good was created for the sake of being here, no? I think so. I wouldn't say it's surprising or anything of the sort, it simply is something that exists and that is already enough, I guess. But yeah, anyways, good evening. Wait, I didn't change this one thing. Um, there it is. So, what's up? What has been going since the last time? I don't I don't think anything particularly surprising has happened. I don't believe anything particularly interesting, I think will be the proper way to classify it, has happened. So I wouldn't try to lie and say, wow, there were so many new discoveries and whatnot. Um, probably, probably, if I had to place it in some kind of action, um, so far, this is more like a simple, not decline, simple, slow arisal of knowledge. It is in a point in which it kind of plateaus, due also to how it works in general to try and learn anything at all. It requires too much patience, and despite believing that one has it, um, it ends up being also the case that in places like here, it unavoidably requires also some degree of separation in order to try and analyze whichever thing is being mentioned at all. So yeah, um, if that doesn't make any sense so far, basically it is. I think, I believe, at least so far, we are getting to understand the stuff in general, or at least as of now, I'm starting in. No, no, not starting. It is a continuous process of understanding and reshaping different concepts and all of that for the sake of properly explaining things in a manner in which it finds itself to be a satisfactory process. So, very similar to that, we from time to time have the possibility of coming here and discussing anything similar to what has been the most recent idea, which in some way integrates any of the parts that I try to mention. Um, in this very quick rundown, it doesn't truly contain, or it can't possibly in general contain everything. It is sadly part of learning also that the creation of knowledge is quite a extenuous process, and just because of that, it already is to some degree something quite, yeah, quite complex by default. Or I think so. I had been also, as a quick side note, I had been trying to see, and most of the time, I remember even I mentioned that before. Um, we misuse the category of complex and simple too many times in too many spaces, and I have been trying to see truly how so it works in something like this, as in the communicational habitat in which one finds themselves. And something quite surprising was to find out that indeed it is incredibly common for everybody to simply discard things which might take any degree of will and effort as something complex. I don't think truly now. I bring that up because I don't think it truly is the most complex thing at all. What can in any way be learned from things like very much, yeah, very much this manner of trying to explain concepts and similarity. It simply requires time, and it simply requires a proper comprehension of those things. It isn't in any particular way something complex, but it's always easier to simply say, yeah, it's complex. I must say, in that sense, I am quite sorry, and excuse me, I guess, for overusing such a terminology in that case. I haven't, yeah, it isn't truly a very conscious awareness, but it unavoidably happens that you realize with enough time how the way in which you picture your environment affects directly the rest of your habitation inside of it, to the degree to which you could very well state that if you utilize harmful language purposefully, you might as well be only making things even harder than what they ever needed to be, because there isn't any proper justification for anything of this sort. And the point is basically, if it isn't all that clear, the point basically is, I am sorry, but I don't think it truly works to keep simply saying things in such a quote unquote light-hearted manner for the sake of, I don't know, commodity. It isn't even commodity. Commodity comes from something that makes your life easier. It is, yeah, I would pretty much declare it from a place of complete ignorance. If anybody were to be fully cognizant about how their environment itself gets dictated so much by their own actions, to the degree to which it happens, it might as well be a matter that we would take with a lot more consciousness and effort. But so far it hasn't fully been in any manner which allows the whole to understand it. It hasn't been properly explained. Therefore, we we find ourselves still struggling in unnecessary ways with depictions of things like this. So yeah, I think after too much text, let's say it like this, it simply happens. Please don't believe so many things that I say. Sometimes I truly, even if that should be my main occupation when we are here, I don't truly pay that much attention to what I say. It it should be the opposite. It should certainly be the opposite. But it's like you can't fully gain new ways of being from one day to the next, based simply on an interest that might as well not even be fully comprehensible. So yeah, I wouldn't suggest, because of that, once again, believing that what I say is in many manners the most objective thing or the most useful idea, even if what I try to in any way mention seems to be oriented towards something nice, I would not argue that what I say is indeed useful every single time or potentially beneficial. That will be the proper classification. The problem is in the creation itself of knowledge. There are so many ways in which you might as well start leveraging yourself with one main concept into the next wave of ideas that it becomes quite hard after being part of this very process for so long to properly recognize which thing serves a useful purpose for everybody, not simply to those who have a very similar degree of development for themselves. So, yeah, it's in a certain manner, it's basically excuse me for having so little considerations in all of those senses. It simply is a habituation of, I guess, probably it will be very simple to call it a habituation of how self, yeah, the selfishness of daily life becomes such a main thing in what can be called the way in which you interact with the rest of the world. Therefore, unavoidably, I wouldn't properly give any kind of meaningful explanation like we are doing here if it wasn't so required of. Not of me particularly, it isn't always a requirement. If it wasn't required of the medium itself to possess those types of meaningful ways of arranging ideas. So yeah, I would I would most gladly say at the very least that despite all of those negative things, it doesn't really mean or invalidate overall the experiences that might happen around this place. It has been, yeah, it's always this constant struggle to fight against the darker side of the mind, where you find that the different, in this case, you might find or try to argue that the different things which are discussed here might as well have no useful application for anything else. And it sadly is proven by proper analysis that all of, not all, obviously, unavoidably something unnecessary will get talked about at some time. But most of the time, let's say, there are different concepts which can be extrapolated to other areas, which in turn benefit from that act, not that are simply given or forced something from the outside which has no correlation to them. No. So, I don't know. I think it is quite a nice experience and it is quite a wonderful opportunity. In general, it is always quite an enjoyable thing. But sadly, if I had to be honest, I believe we are losing quite a huge margin of proper appreciation itself in the front of communicating what is it that we are enjoying. This being yet another case of that very similar process, and I don't mean anything of that sort as a vague indication of goodness, but rather as an underlying problem which has so far not been fully addressed. But I think in many ways you could argue that despite all of that, it is still is a possibility to try and solve the issue itself at hand. It, I know it is going to distract us some more, and I don't really wish to lose. Yeah, I don't want to go on for too long in regards to unrelated ideas, but it also is quite surprising and quite beautiful to realize how all of these things which we discuss here in many ways talk about the potential and whatnot. Certainly, one of the most surprising parts of considering and quote unquote properly adapting oneself to such views is that in the end you might as well gain the capacity to realize in a better degree the true extension of capacities which exists within any human being. Therefore, also, this whole discussion of potential becomes more an idea or a, let's say, debate within the boundaries of will. How much of a will anybody truly has to accomplish any particular desire, because that's the main part of this. There isn't even any particular aspiration which gains the highest place. It is simply observing them. So the question is, who truly has the capacity to aspire to something as big as to gain for itself the classification by the masses of something that might as well be impossible? Who? And how much of a true desire for that exists and struggle towards the accomplishment of say the thing exists is something yet unknown, and something that, when fully understood, if it is possible even to reach such an state, you might as well find out that indeed life is quite good. So yeah, trying to tie everything that I just said about human spirit with what was the previous idea of why do we discuss what we do here. Sadly, very sadly, we discuss too many nice things of that sort, which in any way can be called useful. So yeah, it's quite not. Yeah, I believe language also has some problems. The habituation to lower degrees of communication allows you to not even properly explain some very necessary parts of your emotional range of experience. When I say, or when I was going to say something like, quite often we say things that seem to be in any way useful. No, the reality is, sadly, I believe on almost every single occasion, we gain the possibility of discussing different concepts pertaining what at the end of the day might as well be called one of the most important matters inside of what is the human experience, that is the soul and whatnot. So it is always wonderful to get to research, let's say, all of those things here, and the conclusions to which you can arrive if you were to willingly take on the challenge, let's say, of using your time in order to try and find out if there is anything of any pro, yeah, true and proper value out there, enables quite a lot and gives more than anything else the possibility of properly having what we could call later on a good time. And just because of that, it already is justified everything else. But once again, sadly, the expressions used from time to time are not truly the most accurate ones, and I wouldn't even have the possibility of describing why. I believe, yeah, it might as well come from a side of being overly cynical with the way in which you envision things ends up transforming yourself in a manner, or yeah, in ways that end up letting you get accustomed to the worst part of things. That side which, with enough observation, you truly realize brings no benefit to the human experience. So yeah, it is also trying to in any way deal with that, I guess. But it sometimes is stronger than the conscious side at the very least. After all, I think it has been, at the least right now, mentioned enough to be quite clear that this doesn't appear out of nowhere. This is already existent within how the world functions. Therefore, you might as well say that it is a fundamental part of society. And as with any other thing that happens in the world, the problem is you can't truly solve something of this sort without properly taking social action. And what something of this sort means is to be capable of indicating to the whole masses what ends up being a harmful thing. And certainly, I I don't think, at the least for now, it is meaningful enough to try and dedicate so much of life to the pursuit of one simple solution. I would, yeah, I don't know exactly from where, but I will go as far as to say that the idea of instead pursuing different other optics about problems which affect the majority of people pertaining the average human experience allows you to avoid, at the very least, being so immersed in the negative sides of it, as after all, it lets you have a better, yeah, have a better, more descriptive experience of that, which in return ends up transforming the manners with which you interact with the rest of things. And that is, by default, one of the most beautiful things to have in hand, I will say. And yeah, I never fully know if it is that common or not, but certainly trying to have something like that is, at the very least, for the, yeah, for the personal experience, better than to use so much energy trying to fight something which might as well, as I said before, be also say hi to my dogs, um, might as well be an integral part of the human experience, or the present one at least. So, yeah, anyways, while dogs do their barking, I will drink some water and probably also, I think, open crate already. I don't really have that much more to add. Anyways, yeah, Carita, my beloved. Well, um, so, so, I think, as I said before, finally the dogs went silent again. Um, I think probably how much? Ah, okay. We have 5 more minutes. I like always to try and at least to aim at around how much it is, like half an hour or so of proper, kind of, in this case, a nameless type of discussion. Nothing truly being observed, more like just being here for the sake of being here. And because of that, it might as well be called something meaningful indeed. That we continue for like a bit more. I truly, yeah, I believe it is quite harmful to try and be so conscious about how much time there is left before we can switch activities, let's say. It doesn't truly bring any benefit to be so centered in the negative aspects like that. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, good evening, Savannah. I hope you're well. But yeah, it's indeed better to not be so lost in. Oh wow, we have 3 more minutes. Just 3 more minutes. It doesn't really bring any beneficial thing to be like that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the main problem in this case is also subtly, as I said before, there are too many things which we can explore, and there are so many purposeful ideas that are worth mentioning that the simple choice being presented to you might as well be overwhelming enough to justify not even going for something of a similar degree, not based on how this works in a negative manner, but rather because the depiction of more meaningful parts of the human experience in general take quite a lot of time to properly put together, and patience is so much the key in all of these things that it can even be said, I would even believe, it can even be said that something along the lines of what is practiced here could dogs also again, this time even angrier than before, it seems. Um, it seems the depiction of anything like that in the manner in which we do it like here might very well be considered a meditative process because it takes a lot of energy. And I think at the very least, unequivocally, as a reward, anybody who tries to do something of that sort finds out not only the meaningfulness of that, but also the whole more wide array of similar lower benefits brought by the usage of the will itself, possessed by anybody. And all of that is already enough good, I believe. So yeah, I don't know. I never truly personally stopped to think about those sites. After all, it's the most average thing that happens. Like, yeah, it takes quite a lot of energy sadly to realize that you might as well be lost in something that affects you negatively, not a bit, but to the degree to which your whole human experience ends up being diminished in harmful ways, and you, as an individual, might be so lost in something like that that the moment in which you realize and are capable of performing a change in the right direction, or at minimum in one that doesn't feel as damaging as the others, just because of that, you already gain a lot. You gain already so many things that you never want to go back. I am sad. I am. I don't know if it is that meaningful to say sorry in this case, but yeah, sadly, the change of perspectives was or has been such that things like this one don't seem that particular to somebody like me. Sadly, I guess, because yeah, I think that is the worst part of this always. You can find out people out there who might as well believe that anything of this sort isn't necessary in life. Not that they believe that it might as well not be the most meaningful thing, not quite the opposite. That all of this is fully meaningful? No, that it is the worst thing to even try to do. Something like that is perplexing to hear. But yeah, I don't know. It takes patience, and fortunately enough, that is quite a main feature in terms of easiness of development. So yeah, we are uh, we are fine at the very least because of that. But yes, it is still surprising to take all of those things into consideration, I guess. Anyways, I said before, we're going to wait a little bit. We already did it. I think so, right? I not enough. Well, I mean, I can kind of point out exactly why it didn't work the way in which I wanted, and that is because the dogs distract me. Therefore, I end up believing truly that we didn't spend so little time, but parts, yeah, parts of the subjective experience and being so affected by the outside that your whole self in the presence of danger gets quite a fastened experience of time passage and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess it always is trying to continue with something. It always is quite a surprise to find out that things of this nature are indeed not so present anywhere. Because sadly, this is in no way something hard to obtain. I think it is more along the lines of honesty to say something like that. I don't feel like it truly is something. Maybe you can structure that in because it is not so well said. You could classify it as saying the truth, but I believe it simply is a matter of accepting things as such. There is or this sort in general, not only this one, these sort of things in general are quite a wonderful thing to have at hand, and to get the pleasure of sharing all of that even more is quite a fantastic side or consequence of, yeah, I mean, if you try to subtract yourself from what we are experiencing here, it certainly isn't in any manner as easy to get how surprising the opportunity itself of being here is. It doesn't comprise in any manner something simple. There is no simpleness. Yet somehow we end up here saying that this truly doesn't require that much thinking. I don't know. But yes. Anyways, I think in that sense, perhaps making fun of others isn't truly meaningful. I don't think we ain't that much when I not when I personally, when anybody decides to spend so much time berating on anything, you gain almost nothing. Even less if they are particulars. It is quite meaningless to do something like that. So yeah, excuse me. I don't think it is beneficial in any way to say or to continue simply with, oh wow, here we are discussing something so deep, while the rest isn't. They lose so much. Wow, it is so satisfactory to be self-indulgent, I guess, but it brings you no benefit. Even if you are doing something great, that's the best part about this. Even if you're doing something great, to make fun of others is to be losing, is to be still losing, no matter what you do, no matter how different of a perspective things are based on the goodness experienced by some compared to others, no matter what, never it is justified to make fun of others. So yeah, I don't wish to continue from that for or through that route, I guess. So yeah, let me excuse myself, quote unquote, out of here. I will continue. I will continue into what I wanted today for real. The proper explanation of things. Also, let me see. I shouldn't be. Yeah, I simply need to open. I have already taken into consideration how much everything takes time. I have already opened Krita. I am simply making the canvas, and after that we can switch. Oh, but yeah, the problem will be, as always with this sort of thing, I don't think there is any one particular proper title for something like this. I don't. We are talking with somebody who simply has some notions about stuff. I can't phrase it in meaningful ways. I am not a teacher who knows exactly which type of sentence might catch the most the attention of anybody who tries to observe things of this sort. So excuse me if what I say or the way in which I present things isn't the most shocking one, I guess. It's it's quite expected after all. I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Most people never try in any way to have something like that. And as an excuse, certainly as an excuse, also being part of that people. allows to say that, wow, it isn't my problem neither, so no need to worry due to that side at the very least, I guess. But yeah, anyways, continuing, now properly moving into what what I wanted to say before, what I wanted to properly observe before. I think everything should be fine in terms of no, as always, Greta, my beloved, fully malfunctioning in meaningful ways. Um, Here we are. So, what what's the idea? What did I even wish to talk about? I think I said it before. I had a this one done or ready to try and explore since quite a while. I had let's say it like this. I have been picturing it for quite a not yeah, not simply quite for so long that it already is understandable for me, I believe. And it shouldn't therefore be something so hard. Acquisition? The, always, the only different array of problems isn't exactly picturing things here, but rather using accurate language because yet another excuse. I don't talk other idioms that well. I barely speak minimally okay-ish Spanish. So yeah, let me see. Acquisition is written like this. It is. Thank you. Um, I think, as always, it takes me some time to focus on different stuff, but I think it is quite evident that something weird is happening, and I don't know. I wish to believe it is only Greta having problems or something like that, because yeah, I don't know. This is weird. These dots at the end of every single line are kind of worrying me. I hope my mouse is fine. Anyways, if we lose the mouse, we lose the mouse, and there is nothing to do about it. Sadly. So yeah. So there we are. A minimally coherent ex yeah explanation of what is it about that we are going to be observing here. Um, I think it might as well be subtly. I don't. Yeah. I wouldn't classify it personally as something negative, but for a reference, for the sake of having said it, before it was needed to be clarified, or before even more anybody at any point asks where something like this comes from, um, this unavoidably has to deal, I think so, mostly with psychology. I think that will be the proper classification of things. After all, this is an already, yeah, so far as I understood it, it is an already explained concept, a part of the human experience which unavoidably happens in very similar manners for everybody, or in the subjective experience of everybody. So it doesn't mean that this is going to be hard. It simply is part, once again, of the field of psychology, I guess. So I don't even truly know what is the point of saying something like that. It simply is the desire to not live in the complete void of things. The acceptance of the origin of this idea, after all. Yeah, I think the main worry always is I do not claim authorship over what I say, yet it might very well happen that somebody might interpret that what I am discussing here seems to be all made of only by myself. I know it isn't even close to being made only by myself. I sadly it already started that process of the acquisition of knowledge is such that you can very well realize you don't know exactly where you started and exactly what brought you to the point in which you are right now. It doesn't need to be seen as a problem, but anyways, continuing. So, properly starting now. I think it's quite self explanatory how this title introduces something along the lines of learning. It has to deal mostly with learning. It's almost nothing else this about. The problem, I guess, is the mention of intuition opens up the possibility for this to be considered in every single manner that can be described from the human experience, which contains intuition, a more broader and vague term used to talk about many wonderful parts of the human experience. So sadly, it ends up becoming quite a mythical discussion, something of this sort. And not because of how amazing it is, but rather because how sadly mechanisms of the human experience, of the average human experience, like in this case intuition, had been downplayed to the degree of something which truly has no usefulness. And that's the worst part of this. And I never wished for that to be this sort. But sadly, there is literally no manner in which you can say things like that and get no repercussions. So, yeah. Anyways, completely, anyways, going back into the point, what we are trying to talk about. I remember I have already explained before how learning happens. So, we can very well move from that. We are going to leave behind that side of the explanation. We are going to do something quite harmful, that is to assume that you understand how knowledge gets adopted by anybody. I think at the very least, what I can do is the quickest rundown possible of that idea is by knowledge. The moment in which you wish to acquire knowledge, it happens along the lines of it exists the knowledge itself, which is out there. There is an inner desire of that knowledge, which drives the knowledge to the person who is trying to earn something of this sort. And the moment in which the knowledge tries to be integrated, it exists an adaptation and a comparison of the different propositions brought to the self by the knowledge in terms of if you were to learn, let's say something as highly absurd as possible, if you were to discover tomorrow that you are living in a simulation, something along these lines could very easily transform your whole reality simply because you wouldn't expect something like that to be true to begin with, and secondly, sadly, because something of this sort is already, at the least for most, an unexpected idea. So, seeing how you will need to live based on that leaves you with a lot of new problems being created by the acquisition of, in this particular case, a shocking discovery. But in most cases, even if it isn't shocking, it happens that you wonder truly, what did you gain? So, anyways, now properly continuing, as I said before, assuming that all of the previously described concept is fully understood and is properly understood, assuming that that side is done, liberating ourselves from that responsibility, another array of descriptions. Firstly, in regards to here, in regards to what can be said, the way in which knowledge gets absorbed, in regards to something like that, what needs to be explained in this side, what needs to be said, I think let me preface it like this. Visually, you can represent it in many different forms. Some will even go as far as to create something like a graph to describe things, like obviously in terms of knowledge over time, you always need something to happen here in a previous line, mm, compared to no. I don't think something like that. I don't think something like that. Ah um, be welcome, Maximus. I don't think I don't think in any way knowledge comes from intuition. The explanation, I guess, very good point. Probably based only on the title, it might seem like I mean something like that. No, I am talking about the ways in which knowledge exists within the person and how later on that enables the different sides of what we used to call intuition or gut feeling and such. That is what I'm trying to describe here. Let's say um, it can come from intuition, certainly. I mean, If you were trying to say something like this, it happens that the different ways in which somebody acts is based on the capacities of interpreting things. I am giving you a description. I hope you understand it. The different ways in which you interact with the outside world is based on the capacity of understanding how things exist. Now, this can happen either consciously because you're aware that you know, or because you, even without being aware of your knowledge, can properly act in accordance with something that you already had some degree of knowledge about. Knowledge can arise from intuition because intuition itself is the usage of previously accepted ideas or not fully manifested truths that the person themselves tends to have in hand. This refers in the end to you can very easily transform your ways of existence in a more uh, it's quite hard to describe it because the human experience isn't so technical but more automated. After all, if you know enough, you will always be capable of acting based on intuition, as it means that you have the tools in your hands to move towards the responses, even if you can't properly, consciously explain whatever happens. um, you can at the very least act in accordance to what you believe and what you know that will be useful for the situation. I will say. Now, each of one looks at things through some kind of lens. Yeah, that's. I think it certainly is kind of a different side of a discussion, but unavoidably, after all, the human experience is subjective, and that is why I think the best way to say something to this type of question is unavoidably everybody looks things through their own lens, to the degree to which we can even have things like schizophrenia, where some people see things that nobody else is capable of experiencing because their way of seeing things arranges them in such a manner that they discover or they experience the reality itself from a completely different perspective. So yeah, it it, it makes sense. It is completely right. Our goal is to reach clarity beyond interpretation. I kind of, I mean, a certain problem would be, I wouldn't, if we are being objective, the proposition itself sounds well. Problem arises when you consider how can you truly define something that isn't bound by any type of interpretation if you live in a world in which every single thing is tied to meanings and whatnot, but without getting deep into the question itself. Supposedly, yes, we should strive to reach a more objective reality. Once again, problem, it might as well not be possible. Human experience seems so far to not enable for something like that. But uh, that's a completely different problem that arises later on from the proper analysis of this thing. And yeah, I don't think it needs to be that much of a worry for most people. But sadly, it it is at the very least worth mentioning that certainly, even if you can spend 1,000 years describing what could be the objective best thing, you are still bound by a million things pertaining how stuff itself works, already making assumptions and already basing yourself on previously existent definitions given to you by other things, not obtained by the observation or by the proper knowledge about said ideas. So yeah, it's quite hard in that sense. But once again, that's more like a problem of the people who tries to deal certainly with that problem itself. If it can be reached such a degree of truth for the average person, try to be less objective at the very least. That's an an initial point, and that's enough. But anyways, continuing with this, going back to the idea of knowledge, the explanations and whatnot. I was trying to say, continuing with this one particular knowledge, this graph we were on. You have 1,000 ways in which you can picture something like this. The problem is the definition that we are looking for isn't related to the one in which you describe knowledge as something that throughout time happens consequently, because unavoidably you're looking at evidence that signals or that justifies, let's say, how, because a previous experience happened before, something might happen in the future. The, the problem with something like this is unavoidably based on the capacities of most people. The graph shouldn't be a wavy thing. To begin with, Bronchi, to begin with, it more often than not is always going to look literally like this, or at the worst, based on how many times ideas seem to, let's say, fall into place. This type of graph that ends up peaking incredibly high, something like that, are both the correct ways in which something of this sort happens. The problem is, once again, you can't properly use this. This isn't meaningful for the description that we are using here. This one isn't related at all. This would be more like a revision based on the past. We are talking about the mechanisms that enable knowledge itself. No, don't worry, don't worry. Let me read while I have to picture this thing. Um, I think it works something like this. What is an assumption? Is it a way of describing something? If so, it's part of our biology, isn't it? We constantly describe things because it is in our nature. The problem arises when the divisions this creates, sometimes leading to deeper and deeper descriptions that aren't productive or clear in terms of achieving clarity. No, I mean, more of dictionary type of assumption, something along the lines of you assume that something is in a certain way. Let's say the most the most evident type of assumption used in the past, at the very least, was you assume that tomorrow, once you go to bed today, tomorrow there will be a next day. You assume something along those lines. But this doesn't mean, if you have no way of proving this for yourself, this doesn't mean that it is going to happen. There is no way in which you can be sure if this is going to happen if your own experience can't validate the rest of the outside. And that's the problem itself. And that is also one of the main concerns of philosophy, I guess, of how to properly define something. without using prior assumptions in that sort. But yeah, it's a completely different idea. So sorry. Anyways, now um, you can't probably you will you can, but there is also always a non-zero possibility uh, that you will not. What makes you think that you can? Unavoidably, that once again, the assumptions itself of maybe tomorrow, just I did it today, based on nothing changing, I will just like I did before, also wake up. Um, but yeah, now trying to explain properly what is or how knowledge works in some kind of more understandable manner. The proper way to observe this idea comes not from, as I said before, an analysis based on the previous things that preceded, but rather on the nature itself of how knowledge can be said to be experimented. Also, give me a second, because by thank you, Maximus, for your follow. Thank you. Um, anyways, here, as I was saying, knowledge. How can you say what is this? How this thing has any correlation to knowledge? This here, it can very well be described that particularly the ways in which knowledge appears can very well be compared to how it appears also that basic biology functions in terms of the moment in which you start to have one single unit of life, one cell, that's the proper definition here, the moment in which you have one cell of knowledge, knowledge itself, as long as there is any desire to acquire more, we are not explaining why there might be any desire, individual motivations aside, as long as there is any desire, not only it happens that knowledge itself as something that you already know exists, but also there is something beyond what can be described as the initial already existing piece, in this case being in this picture, in this drawing, these things, these ones which already have a dot, once again, Moronki, these ones which already have a dot can be said to be already cemented pieces of knowledge. Those ones don't have anything to add. They are already placed. If you have to give it yet another way of picturing it in a two-dimensional way, let's say, they become the initial bricks of construction which allow later on for what are the empty spaces that can be still filled with more knowledge still. This meaning that from here, unavoidably, in terms of, and that is why it becomes so useful to see it as something along the lines of mitosis, unavoidably knowledge is going to reproduce itself. As long as the individual has some desire to keep on learning, to keep on discovering, knowledge tends to increase. It, I don't think there is any way to say it which doesn't sound so obvious. So certainly it works in this manner, if you observe enough how knowledge happens in most people, once again, the manner in which you acquire knowledge, the manner or the particular justifications existing for any one individual, any of those things aren't the particular concern of this. As long as things work properly, as long as at the very least we have that, unavoidably, more and more things will keep being filled and more space will appear between those. And the fundamental side of this is also, let me try to picture it here in pertaining this visual example, because there is also something very interesting that doesn't get properly talked about. If the different things that you're talking about are related, which are already a given with this explanation, something being next to another thing indicates that, let's say, these different ideas are unavoidably conversant with one another. If you have an array of things which are all interconnected, the moment in which you start to develop yourself, the moment in which you start to gain knowledge about something, the moment in which you gain knowledge about very similar things, if you needed to fill an empty space as it happens here in the middle, it will be a lot easier. It will be a lot simpler to comprehend the stuff based on what you already previously possess. It's so far there is nothing that should be hard to get. Knowledge works in that way. If there is any aspiration, the person has the capacity to learn. If something is closely related to other things, it will be easier to discover or to integrate instead of that network of ideas. No, I don't think it is constant. I mean it in the acquisition of knowledge is a constant. As long as, once again, as long as there is any desire, as long as the person is functional and whatnot. Sadly, certainly, knowledge by itself, in a more objective explanation, or in a more objective manner of picturing it as a whole, we sadly lose too many things that are precious, that would certainly influence positively the experiences of different people. Sadly, we lose too many, but I am referring to the obtenance of knowledge based on the individual experience. Um, ah, but yeah, continuing with this, I think, sadly, this doesn't have anything more that needs to be particularly added. Besides, once again, if somehow it is hard to understand with the explanation pertaining cells, you can also picture it as, because knowledge always needs something previous to itself, you can very much establish, say, that there is a pyramid of knowledge always being constructed, that there is something that always precedes something new that you also discover, and there is something that serves as a, let's say, founding block of an idea for something that comes later on, be it the first, the second, the third, infinite layers. We're not worried about in which layer somebody exists. It is simply a definition of it works this way. Simply based on that, simply based on this initial explanation, just with that, you can say unavoidably that there are origins of things. Yeah, but basically, also, you can very much say that something is brought by other previous thing. We are not particularly in any manner worried about where does it come from? Why is it born? That are more, I think they are called ontological questions, and I am not in any way capable of explaining something like that. We're simply saying it is only that it happens in this manner. Now, why this is important and how it is in any way correlates to intuition, that there is a certain degree of problem here. We need to try and take these boats. I think I can do it with boats. It shouldn't be a problem to do it with boats. It has already been defined. It has already been shown to work like this, that in the human experience, let's start with this one. In the human experience, something quite wonderful happens, and that is you can only pay attention to a certain degree of things. You can only be focused on certain stuff. And this is due to how consciousness works. If you were to be aware of every single thing that happens around you, and if you were to have every single idea that was possible for yourself, every single brain will find itself to be overwhelmed because there are too many possibilities. If, let's say it like this, right now, if you are in any way paying attention, you will say that you are having already one idea. If you were also to be aware of your physical needs, your physical well being, how things in the future might go, how this might be in any particular way impactful, how this can be correlated to any other knowledge that you already possess. Also, how somebody who you know is close to you, if you were to be aware of all of those things, a problem that exists within the human brain is we are not capable so far of sustaining so much pressure inside of us. We can only be conscious about a handful. Being conscious about every single thing requires energy which we don't possess and capacities which we don't have. Certainly, it will. I I would probably go with a definition along the lines of sadly, I would say not that they are going to freeze, but rather that they are going to be directly melted or going to not just overload, but rather suffer critical errors because, once again, no human is capable of doing something like that. And there are ways in which, once again, something different, a foot of the note idea. There are ways in which you can say that some people reach such states in which you might, in any of these definitions, or in these visual representations, from being these tiny circles of attention, you can start to gain more and more awareness. It still is a handful of things what you comprehend. It is still a little bit more. Never nobody is fully aware. That literally can't happen by biological design. You can't have everything that courses through your mind given to you. But that, certainly, to a certain degree, the problem also, okay, addressing particularly the idea of cognition levels is we at the very least we have a properly defined things like the difference between an infant and an adult, but so far in more modern analysis of these ideas, there is a certain degree of problem, and that is how your cognition seems to be not so correlated with true capacities, but rather with a proper awareness. Let's say it isn't that you, as an individual, couldn't think about society because you lacked the fundamental capacity to do so, but rather because you lacked, in this case, let's say like this, because you lacked this fundamental block, all of this part of the pyramid ends up being blocked to you because you can't in any way think about something that for you literally doesn't exist. So a problem with how, at the very least in the present, we talk about cognition is that we are not fully taking into account that also the past needs to be preceded by other things which get developed with the mere most basic comprehension of stuff. But yeah, so far I don't have anything to truly disagree with what you said. It's kind of right. Now, so far we have explained two things. Let's say this is knowledge and consciousness. We have those two things. Those are the two different parts which we have already here. Now there is where finally intuition comes into picture. I think it will be very fitting, Blue. If if I had to give it some warnings, I guess, is that sadly, yeah, I guess it's always a problem with these things, but sadly, it isn't. It isn't more than just an excuse from the rest. I wished to properly explain it. We don't have that much information because sadly, discussions about the unconscious mind and how there are underlying processes have been defined as unnecessary for so long. We barely have new developments and we barely have new ideas appearing in this field of knowledge, of analysis and theorizing of how the mind works. I am sorry that it is going to be so simple to a certain degree because this shouldn't be such a simple stuff. It literally is something that happens to everybody. Now, yeah, I will explain also how something like that works because I guess it certainly needs to be at the very least mentioned. Um, Anyways, here we have the knowledge itself exists. The consciousness is what observes particular aspects of the knowledge which you possess. And something that always happens is if you have to establish that your consciousness moves around what you know in order to see what it can create, it always also has some degree of consciousness, sorry, of unconsciousness itself, which is, and that is the problem. We are not even aware so far if it only exists in the vicinity of what you are conscious, or if it can extend to the whole area of knowledge that you have. We can't define so far how the unconscious mind works completely. We don't know yet if something of this sort exists within shorter boundaries, or if truly it can happen that the unconscious mind, as long as your knowledge is strong enough, can go to different places which have no correlation at all with one another. So far, to not give such a senseless response based on what has been previously accepted as the most understandable explanation, it happens that it seems to be, or it seemed to be, in the past, along with your consciousness, the intuition which you possess about things pertains to a realm of different other ideas which are also related very much to what you are paying attention to, because the brain processes which happen in the background unavoidably are observing other similar ideas and have at hand different functions which you might need to keep on developing. That is so far, once again, we can't properly establish if this happens in a very delimited area or if it happens completely inside of the whole brain, that your unconscious mind can allow you, let's say, by intuition, to use knowledge which you already possess from any single place if you are capable of finding it or not. We don't know that. So it is better to say at the very least that the conscious mind can indeed use the resources brought by the unconscious side to keep on paying attention to other related things which are not so easily accessible by the consciousness itself, but which are still being observed by the brain as a whole. That's the definition itself. That's the that's the end point of what I have been talking about in terms of intuition and how it works with what already exists. Now, as Maximus says, there are also two different things. Or not that there are two different things. It happens in two different ways. Also, because knowledge itself gets constructed based on the capacity to exist and the desire to be made, be it whichever type of explanation exists for this from the individual. Now, what also matters is you can, let's say, ignoring where exactly your consciousness is. If you have the capacity, you can willingly picture stuff and keep adding to your already existing scheme of ideas, to your already existing whole view of things. You can keep on expanding and making it wider with conscious efforts, as in, is if you were to sit down and read a book, that is going to be an incredibly transformative experience, assuming that it is something that you care about and whatever. All assumptions helping for the sake of this argument. It will happen. You will develop and you will gain things consciously. But it can also happen somehow if you were to properly discover something useful, or that is that's yet again the problem of explaining something that hasn't been fully explored. Let me see. Conscious knowledge is the knowledge we are fully aware of, such as through thinking, learning, and reasoning. In contrast, unconscious knowledge includes intuition, instinct, and gut feelings, drawing from patterns our brain has learned over time, even if we are not actively aware of them. Yeah, basically. So far, I guess that will be like a 10 in an exam. Um, Certainly, that's the way in which it works. So far. Um, the funny thing is, we have too many explanations or too many what we conceive as different explanations for the very same phenomena. Once again, the unconscious mind exists even if you are not aware of it. The way in which you call it doesn't matter at all. You can call it, as you did here, you can call it gut feelings, instinct, intuition, however you wish to. It exists by itself. But um, let's do it like this. We're going to take a pause, and after the pause, I am going to continue explaining what is the other side of the development of knowledge, because there is this also existing possibility of creating ideas based on the capacity to adapt yourself, but it will take some time. So yeah, let's let me see. Probably let's establish it at zero. Start. Wait, it didn't change. Thank you. It is okay. Break. I don't know how long, but break. I'll be back. I'll be back and we will continue with this. Anyways, thank you for your patience and sit tightly. Wow. Okay, we are back. It didn't take me that long, at the very least. Anyways, so bef- before continuing, before moving on, because I wanted to do this before, and I had been forgetting. So excuse me. Uh, before returning to reschedule content, let me hear this. I because we are finally talking about stuff, therefore we can properly continue also discussing things of this sort. Who who is interesting like this? Who has something, anything minimally related to what we are talking about here? This guy, Sun. Sun is also probably somebody who can help anybody who wants to know. Very, very, very interesting. Also, philosophy related, I would say it. Um, Probably, I wouldn't wish to put him in a risky position. It might as well not be his forte, but still, he knows a lot of stuff. So maybe he has a hand to offer. Anyways, continuing. Now for real. Now being back for real. Where did we left? Okay. Okay. Um, we are on here. We left before explaining now something also wonderful. How it works that you acquire knowledge consciously, you can very easily be aware that the moment in which you get an idea, it becomes integrated with what you are. And it allows later on, also obviously, for a further development of those very same branches of knowledge. This in turn becomes quite the useful thing because that is one of the main characteristics of conscious development of knowledge, that it basically takes you in one direction and lets you keep evolving in that one particular side because you are literally using your time, your energies, and what you have in order to keep on moving towards that particular side. That is also very easy to get if you can properly picture this as something that works. It could very well be said in a more visual representation here with the wall. It will be like you're starting to stack all the knowledge that you gain and you keep only developing that. But it is kind of impossible at the same time to only gain based on what you are focusing on because it is a mechanism of adaptation itself which already existed since long ago, that we can't only learn from what already exists and from what we are putting our minds to. There is this side of, as we have been describing, the unconscious mind, which also works in parallel to the conscious one. Something wonderful that happens is if something seems very easy to learn, it might as well get created by the unconscious mind. You can learn things, what we were trying to establish before. It is both possible by the conscious and unconscious mind, by those sides of intuition, by your more dormant side to develop theory as much as it is for your conscious one. The problem is, sadly, not only that we haven't even studied something like this enough, here is a major problem with this. We haven't studied this to the degree to which it would even allow to properly help other people find themselves learning stuff through the unconscious way. We haven't started to get proper theories in place for all of this stuff. We haven't even begun to work on proper visual representations of this that can give tools to others to work in tandem with themselves in order to obviously once again obtain as much knowledge about what they wish as it would be possible. It it is a problem that exists that can be solved that we haven't so far properly solved. Anyways, anyways, completely unrelated. Now, why do we even care about this? The question is, why do we even have a necessity to care about something of this sort? Because the discussion itself started with, wow, yeah, it works like this. And you have a knowledge, and you either acquire it through conscious or unconscious ways. Why is this important? Why is this meaningful? If implying that the visual representation was capable of explaining properly the idea, once you get this next conclusion shouldn't be that hard to obtain. Okay, I think we have already mentioned this before, so it shouldn't take that much more time. That the possibility to keep on developing, to keep on obtaining new sources of information and integrating what can be extracted from them into this whole array of ideas, which can very well be called the network of knowledge that exists inside the mind of anybody, as long as there are enough conditions being met, once again, the possibility and the desire, which are vastly more specific, as in, for example, we say that they have the possibility. What does something like having the possibility mean? That you have either something that can offer you knowledge, that can be integrated, that you also have the capacity to learn, because there are some certain I think it has to deal with the frontal lobe and the capacities to integrate new knowledge. That if you were to suffer a big enough trauma in that particular part of the brain, it will be impossible for you to develop any new theory. So that it's also something to take into account, the possibility to keep on discovering and possessing enough desire and, let's say, a pulsion towards what can be called new knowledge out there. As long as all of those things work, knowledge will unavoidably get created. The problem is, in most cases, this means simply learning. In the few rare occasions in which you are developing new theories, in which you are trying to solve huge questions which have so far not been properly dis- dispelled, if something of that sort were to happen, we are kind of dealing with a different mechanism. We are kind of talking about a different language there. But so far, only on this side of the explanation only, there is no need to worry about anything of that sort. So far. Now, that is the first side. That is the one that is completely fine. And the second aspect, that the second most, yeah, I think it pretty much is the second most important thing, also with this concept in mind. We have already defined them and we have already given them a proper importance. What are the conscious and unconscious mind doing? It can very well happen that you can utilize knowledge which can't fully be said to be held instead of what you're actually paying attention to, because simply you have the capacity to utilize things which are, it seems, so far in the vicinity to keep on solving the different problems that you face. Also, because particularly while discussing it so much, getting more into the theoretical side, it also seems to indicate everything that you can also very much utilize very easily ideas which you fully comprehended in terms of visual representations. Let's say something along the lines of, if you barely get a little bit of this, if you barely understand what is being said, if you integrated something minimally, it isn't going in any way to be similar than if you have something which you are fully confident on, which you can use completely, which you have the complete knowledge of, be it because it is one singular unit, or because, in an even better perspective, you started to interconnect stuff. That is how and why properly picturing the neurons of the brain as something that can keep on expanding so much is important, because something of this sort allows you to get that the knowledge which you have the most and the knowledge which you explore the most are not only there for when you are using it, for also for when you need it, despite all the odds. And this whole array of ideas keeps on expanding and expanding. Now, going on to this, back to the proper saying and how to try and see it. I think I kind of forgot to mention this part, but yeah, I will explain it. Um, okay, there it is. The ideas which are most cemented inside of the brain, inside of the mind, inside of this, once again, this field of knowledge are the ones that you can access to the fastest. And this doesn't apply just to the unconscious or conscious mind. This happens in both sides, and there is this sort of convergence of aspects, obviously, of the mind, which can be found once you allow the mind itself, or not that you allow, mostly when you are in a need of one of these very well known ideas, you can more readily be it by both ways, have it at hand, ready to be used and fully capable of being expressed. There is also something here, I didn't mention anything like that. In any way did I mention something like that, but also something very funny that happens is, even if you, implying, even if you were to be the most practical articulator of ideas, if something is inside of your mind and you don't fully get it, you will still have a hard time. Proper comprehension of something also allows you to properly explain it. It also is a different skill to properly perform such a thing, but even if you were to be the best one in the world, it will be impossible for you to express something if you don't get completely every single array of meaning that is involved with this one particular concept. And it doesn't mean anything bad so far, because it simply is a reassurance that to properly know stuff, you don't need simply to be good at explaining things. To know stuff, you will unavoidably need to know it properly, to study and to use the knowledge itself in meaningful ways. So far, that is also something that I didn't mention before. And I think, I guess, I am going to make it over here. Also, good morning, Alvin. It has been a long time. I hope you are well. Welcome. Uh, Let me say it like this. Also, I yeah, I was going to talk about it. I guess it is going to be incredibly funny because it is highly related. It is incredibly related to Alpin. I guess it will be even correct to say that Alpin knows more about this than me. Um, but physical health. Physical health is incredibly necessary to acquire knowledge. I will try to explain it. But yeah, yeah. So far, I think everything is fine. So very nice to have you around. I know you were working certainly on this huge concert. I didn't expect it to be videos. I thought you were going to also be dancing. I was quite saddened by that. I wanted to see Alpine dance live, but not always. You get everything that you wish for. Um, but it was still amazing. It was probably so far. Well, no, I mean certainly so far based on what I have seen. the highest degree of effort I have seen in quite a while. I don't think, yeah, I don't remember if I have seen something like that. Um, yeah. I know the tracking kind of. It wasn't so clunky, but sometimes it got incredibly weird. Suddenly the walking animation, as always, the the walking animation that was incredibly funny. But I mean, the most important thing, I think it was that you had a great time. So how to want anything else but that? Already satisfied with just that awareness, I guess. Now, before explaining this, because I didn't do it, I was kind of lost. Um, to do a proper service, let me explain quick rundown of what we have been talking about. Kind of. So we start with on the acquisition of knowledge and the nature of intuition itself. That's the main title, we could say. Um, we have here two visual different representations for the same concept. How it is that knowledge gets created, and also what are we even seeing? Representations are the big this one circle, the red and blue ones can be called the consciousness itself, and the unconsciousness. We established that you can very much say the conscious mind is capable of observing a little bit of information, while the unconscious mind also hovers around all the other things which are interrelated to this very same degree of ideas. This means that in either side, you're observing something and you're also discovering things and having them at your disposition, be it consciously or unconsciously, based on where you are placing your mind. This, why is this in any kind of manner useful? That was the final question, kind of. Because with a proper understanding of this, you can also see how more easily it can be accessed something. Because two principles. First and foremost, knowledge can always be created as long as the conditions are the correct ones. And one of the most wonderful things, I guess, in this sense, is people has so many possibilities of learning despite almost any other condition, physically speaking, that as long as what I am going to explain here, physical health and mind, um, as long as a minimal degree of healthiness exists, even if you were to be bodily paralyzed, you can learn a lot of information itself. That is the first point. And the second one is that those ideas which you are the most accustomed with, which you have the most knowledge of, can be used better and faster than the rest. And this in turn ends up leading to the conclusion of not only it is good that you can specify on some types of ideas, but also it is nice because it allows you to keep on developing even faster on that very same area because you possess enough knowledge about something that is so fundamental to so many other, what is it, preceding, no, consequential knowledges. All of that is so far the shortest rundown possible. And now, as I said before, quite coincidentally, um, how something like this happens and why it is necessary to take into account the physical health. Because I I try to not get so annoyed, but it is incredibly annoying to hear people say, "No, yeah, you know what? You can't learn about something because you don't have all the conditions. Do you even know what the conditions are? It requires two minimal things to function well, to enable The process of learning requires so little things that if it were to be properly appreciated, we will have so many other tools at our disposal than what we classify. Since when did it become something that required so many specific things to happen? And why was it allowed to become such? Is something that always annoys me. Anyways, explanation itself. Physical health. What do you need, physically speaking, to be capable of allowing the mind to work? Let's say, just to be sure, essential needs met. Here it is. Essential needs met. The capacity to focus. Wow. It is incredibly hard. Certainly, nobody has access to that. And finally, I think that is kind of the hardest one. And okay, I don't mean it with sarcasm. I didn't mean that with sarcasm. It certainly is quite the hard thing to have a functional brain because some people ignore even the different problems that they are inducing upon themselves based on the different environmental influences that they allowed to have, which are in some way or another modifying the functionality of their selves. So it can very much be said sometimes that even if somebody seems to be fully healthy, it is still possible for them to not possess a functional brain in terms of the acquisition of knowledge as it is in this case. Anyways, now proper explanation, proper breakdown. I promise that proper breakdown. The physical health is incredibly easy. As long as you have your essential needs, you have the first point covered. You simply need it. I don't know if they have changed since millennia, but so far, as long as I remember them, it is just proper hydration, proper food intake, rest, and maybe physical cleanness. With just those four things, you have your essential needs met. Now, the capacity to focus is wow, incredible. It is the hardest thing to have nowadays, it seems, because nobody wishes to even pay attention to stuff. And it needs to be separated from what is a functional brain because we have damaged so much what is the capacity to be paying attention to any one thing for long enough that it became a separate point. But that is the second thing. You simply need to have it is mentioned here. You have a desire, you already have the capacity to focus. If you can understand that you wish for something, you already possess the different things that might allow you later on to aim towards the obtenance of that one particular piece of knowledge which might allow you to do things. And we are only talking about knowledge. Here is the caveat of this idea. We are only talking about knowledge. There are different things that might also be considered knowledge, which do not fully apply here. But on the more theoretical side, as long as you possess a functional brain, you are fully done. You don't need anything else to understand things. Now, properly clarifying, I accept that there are some things that have not to deal so much exactly with only existing and only having to deal with the experiences themselves that you might have in terms of what are your mental capacities. You can't learn certain sports if you physically can't even perform them. You can't learn how it feels and how it is adequately done a certain type of action in any kind of physical manner if you are not capable of accessing that possibility. It will be one very abstract example. You can't understand how something like having wings works because you don't have wings. You can't picture how to move something like that if you don't even possess such limbs in this case as it will be to have wings. You can only do what is within the boundaries of your own self, but at the very same time, that is the most important part here. You don't need it so much. You don't need nearly as much as some people try to make it. No, because you need the perfect conditions and you need to be not stressed and you need to be at calm and you need to be completely intending to learn. Sometimes you don't even wish to learn about the stuff and you end up anyways discovering new pieces of information that allow you to later on form even better fields of theory. It is horrible to say that you need so many things and to make it an even harder topic than what it already is, when in reality it is such a simple thing that uses so little and that gives so many benefits to anybody willing to partake on that. It is a disservice to everyone when you say and when you go on an argument that there are so many different difficulties. Which part of this is in any degree something hard? Which part of this is in any manner something that nobody could get, that would be impossible to break down properly? It is incredibly disheartening to hear something of that sort. But, anyways, we are not here to complain. We are simply present to discuss the idea itself. And I think so far as the idea goes, there isn't that much more for me to add. Nothing else to really say. Not much more, I guess. But yeah, that will be the topic of today. That will be what I wanted to say since so long. I guess I do have it in the background of my mind. Let's make it quick. Because it certainly is a question that begs to be asked. Why would you even learn about something like learning? Or what should you even care about learning? I hate to live in the reality in which saying something like that is controversial. I hate it so much, but the knowledge is the final freedom. And I am not here to discuss with cynics who say, oh no, yeah, ignorance is the highest form of bliss. No, I am not here today for that. Why it is necessary to be aware of something like this? Because knowledge enables people, nothing else. If you are a cynic, stay cynic in your own tiny room. Thank you. But yeah, that will be the final question itself. Once again, which seems so fundamental to respond. Why something of this sort is in any way useful to consider? Why would you even spend time trying to talk about it when there are so many other things out there? Because knowledge itself, to know the possibility that you have of discovering things, to be aware of how simple this process is, how on its fundamentals, as long as you get here. Maybe if you're trying to obtain a piece of information that is here and you don't have the whole development itself to reach this state, maybe it is going to be hard, but it is the most visual breakdown of everything can be obtained in terms of knowledge as long as you build up enough every other thing that needs to be present in order to reach those conclusions. It isn't an overly complicated mechanism of the mind, despite, and I said it 1,000 times here today, it is true, we don't have that much information, but with what we have already on hand, it suffices every other need, and it allows more than enough anybody who is willing to try and learn to do so. It isn't hard in any manner, and it isn't a problem in any particular way. So yeah, anyways, I guess now for real, we are done. I don't have that much more to say. Thank you, but I don't, I don't believe I have other other stuff to add. I at least not for this one. Yeah, that's my peak, I guess, today. That's it. But yeah, anyways, people, as always, thanks for being here, I guess. It has been a wonderful occasion. Um, I don't even know what will be the next one. Probably, I guess I will try to go back to reading something. Supposedly, there is a category, so I want to try out the reading category. But yeah, we will see. Um, I certainly don't like making promises because I know I break them even more with something like this, where I am so reliant only on my own words to be sure that I'm going to be here. So yeah, I wouldn't say tomorrow. Maybe, but it isn't a promise. I don't promise stuff because I know that I fail. So yeah, thank you for everything. That has been that for today. Have a nice one. I guess. No raid. Sadly, this time around, no raid. Have a good life, but think and realize that it isn't as hard of a concept as people make it look like. Anyways, until the next occasion, and as always, thanks for every single thing. It has been an incredibly pleasant time. Goodbye.